Hello everyone. Before we start today's video, if you could all do me a solid and lightly tap the like button, perhaps share the video about and leave a comment. If you are not subscribed, subscribe as well. It would greatly help this channel. Thank you very much. Hello everyone, welcome back to a Megon 2 Electric Boogaloo. Today we are going to be talking about Governor Gavin Newsom of California, which means, yes, a political video, but this one has the kind of consequences where I really do have to talk about it, because there's no way around not talking about this because of how dumb it is. I saw this via an image that was being shared on Twitter. New York Post, California makes it illegal for doctors to disagree with politicians. As you can see underneath, it references California's COVID misinformation bill is chilling. And there is a big point here. But another point does get raised about whether or not it can in fact stand long term, but also the floodgates it opens. That's not to say though there is a precedent here, because there isn't. In fact, something else similar had happened in the past, and the Supreme Court had to intervene, which we will get to when we need to. For now, it's not as important. For now, let's tell you a little bit about Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is the 40th and current governor of California. He was also, from 2004 until 2011, the 42nd mayor of San Francisco. You know, that dive where syringes are seen about. Political science analysts suggest he is a moderate relative to almost all Democratic legislators in California. However, based on what he signs, that is skirting of the truth. He holds a considerable amount of popularity, not just when he was mayor, but also as governor, winning a majority of 72% of the vote when he was re-elected in 2007 as mayor of San Francisco. He is currently up for re-election. He has pushed for reform with the death penalty, making it so no one can be executed as long as he is governor. He's also part of a many billion-dollar fraud scandal. Well, he's the governor while that happened. Many were very much against the COVID stuff, and yeah, that's going to hurt him. Add to the fact there have been many recall attempts, signatures required, it was quite bad, but for the sake of it, according to the Associated Press, there was no actual recall election, which surprised me. It really did. So I guess now we can go to the New York Post article. Conformity of thought is now required, whether it is online, on college campuses, or if you are in California, in a physician-patient relationship. The next paragraph references PayPal's $2,500 fine for anyone involved in sending, posting, or publication of any messages, content, or materials that, in PayPal's sole discretion, promote misinformation. They U-turned on that because they got a lot of flack for it. And rightly so. It's not just a cock-up. That is a massive overreach from a company that is getting enough flack as it is for being remarkably restrictive with who can and cannot use their services. Then again, I guess that is all our fault because PayPal has become such an important part of how many people, a vast number of people, I'm sure some of you don't, but the vast majority use it for various transactions, as it saves a lot of time. So unlike those PayPal users who no longer have to worry about this fine being, well, there, doctors don't really have this relief, because Governor Gavin Newsom recently signed California Assembly Bill 2098, making it the first state to attempt to censor what physicians can say about COVID-19 to their patients. This is a dangerous and possibly unconstitutional effort that other states must resist. The obvious issue is called the First Amendment. It's an obvious one. So when this one invariably goes to the Supreme Court, they then have to act and use the context apparently of COVID to decide whether or not misinformation is a valid, well, thing you can implement. But there's another worry, a big worry, a huge concern in fact, because while Gavin Newsom is adamant this only applies to COVID, this opens the floodgates of what doctors can and can't say when they offer all forms of medical assistance to their patients, because if they do cover all their bases, there's a chance they peddled misinformation, but if they don't cover all their bases, then they have denied the patient the right to certain types of care that may well be better suited to them depending on their medical conditions that could well be impacted negatively and or positively by the thing you are restricted from talking to them about. The statute instructs that it shall constitute unprofessional conduct for a physician and surgeon to disseminate misinformation or disinformation related to COVID-19, including false or misleading information regarding the nature and risks of the virus, its prevention and treatment, and the development, safety, and effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccines. Well, there's a hot topic for debate right now, isn't there? The law requires that the Medical Board for California take action, which will include potential license revocation against any licensed physician charged with unprofessional conduct. But this is where the First Amendment comes into it, because at a 2018 Supreme Court case, National Institute of Family and Life Advocates versus Becerra held that professional speech, which is speech by licensed practitioners based on their expert knowledge and judgment, is protected by the First Amendment. The court, though, in that instance did suggest that regulations of professional conduct that incidentally burden speech might be allowed. One of the big problems is that the statute clearly has constitutional problems in defining what COVID misinformation is. The law itself has the definition that false information is something that is contradicted by contemporary scientific consensus contrary to the standard of care, which, if you have an IQ over 1, so all of you at least, is nebulous. And as noted by the Supreme Court, professionals might have a host of good faith disagreements, both with each other and with the government on many topics in their respective fields. And the statute does not specify who is the arbiter of contemporary scientific consensus on COVID, so I assume when they're told to toe the line, it's the CDC. Or are we just going to use the ADL for this? They're experts after all. Interestingly, the bill has been on the table for the past 2 months. There are articles that go back to August discussing this, with Gavin Newsom repeatedly saying this bill is not to be used for anything other than COVID misinformation. Problem is, this opens up Pandora's box on controlling what a doctor can say and what a doctor can advise. Once you start to control their freedom to think, you may as well just have robots in. And there is a risk, a big risk, because you need someone who is free to think, to diagnose properly that that person cannot perform their duties because they are being restricted about what they can consider, and by extension what they can then convey to the patient. By opening up this box and laying down this groundwork, even if it stays here for a brief moment before the Supreme Court suddenly say no, sod off with that, you still have the chance of pushing other bills for other illnesses, other diseases. Don't forget, here in 2017, before you took office, Gavin Newsom that is, your state said it was okay not to tell someone if you have HIV as long as your intent is not to give it to them. Your state did that. That's not okay. By the way, I don't know how you prove intent on that. I really don't. You open up these boxes and you allow people to be treated as a form of petri dish, with those who are supposed to then deal with their problems, who are essentially legally hamstrung. A key part of the Hippocratic Oath is to do no harm. Primum non nocere. Can you actually tell me this is applicable when you prevent others from doing their job at the risk of them then doing harm because of it? Especially with what is currently going on concerning COOFness. Pfizer really did themselves dirty, didn't they? Yes.